That 747 landing.
One way straight ahead,
That's what we heard when you were trying to tell us about the gun, wasn't it? Wow.
Memorials where we knew civilians, Chinese men were killed in this extreme operation. Now this one remembers 66 Chinese men who were taken somewhere along Changi Beach and killed in cold blood. Now, I shared with you the story of Mary's son, and let me share with you my family story. Now, when these announcements came up, everyone didn't know what was going on, and it was my great-grandfather and great-grand-uncle, the two of them reported to the center in the east. It was a primary school, Tilakura Primary School. The Japanese just took over. And the Japanese used actually very arbitrary methods to gauge whether you were anti-Japanese or not. And actually thousands and thousands of men to go through. And they said that they had a timeline. It started 18th Feb, it finished March the 4th. Very, very short period of time. Now, what methods did they use? They'd ask all these men to line up, and first of all, they'd see if you were wearing glasses. How many of you wear glasses here? Quite a lot, about half of the group. Straight away, no questions asked, you would be taken and moved to one side, held separately. Now, why? Glasses to the Japanese meant that you read a lot, which meant that you were educated, which meant that you knew about what was happening in China, what had happened between the two countries earlier on. You would cause problems for them. That was their logic. The other thing they would check was that they would ask to see your hands. They would feel soft or rough. Because if it was rough, that meant that you were probably a laborer, you didn't have an office job. Okay. Soft, sitting comfortably in an office, you are educated. Same thing, you're going to cause problems for them. Another group, they would ask the men to remove their shirts and they would check their bodies for tattoos. Back then, if you were Chinese, you had a tattoo, most probably it would be the Chinese tattoo, and the connection would be you were part of a secret society. And our secret societies had a lot of connection with the Chinese secret societies still. So again, another problem group. Now, these men will all be taken to one side and they'd be held for a couple of days. My family, the two of them, they were held overnight. And then eventually they would be taken onto trucks into the jungles of Singapore or the beaches of Singapore. To the jungles, they'd be marched in. The men would be made to dig graves, shallow graves. Once that was done, they would be all lined up facing towards the graves. They would be tied together or chained together, hand to hand, leg to leg, sometimes even neck to neck. Machine guns at their back, open fire, and very conveniently, the bodies would fall in. Japanese would just quickly cover it up. If they saw anyone still moving about, one shot to end it, and that's it. Those who were taken to the beaches, even worse. They didn't even get graves. They were tied, again, to each other, and then marched into the water, up to chest level. They'd be facing out to the sea, machine guns at their back, open fire, same thing. They would just let the tides wash your bodies away. And even if you weren't mortally wounded, say you got injured in your limbs or something, because you're tied to the two guys beside you, you would be dragged down with them as well. And right up until end of April, early May, in the Indonesian islands near us, they kept on reporting bodies washing up on their shores. Now, for my family, I mentioned they were held at the primary school overnight. Middle of the night, great-granddad, call of nature, had to use the restroom, and he asked the guard that was watching them. The guard just waved him away sleepily, perhaps because he was really tired after all the fighting. And my great-granddad was walking around the corridor, and another classroom door opened, and this guy popped his head out. He was an Indian gentleman. He pulled him in and asked him, "Where are you going? Follow me." And he had a whole bunch of other people with him, Chinese men. And he explained that I'm taking them to the back. There's a back way out. Take it, follow me. And he asked, can you wait? Can I go and get my brother? He wasn't willing to wait because the Japanese guards had just patrolled by. And it was just that few minutes that made all the difference. And he made the choice to follow that Indian gentleman. And there was like a little hole that had been cut at the fence behind the school. went out of it, he didn't go back home because he didn't know what was going to happen. He didn't want his family to get into trouble in case, they found he escaped, they were going to go there and hunt for him. He actually walked to Changi. He went to one of the boatmen, paid him a sum of money to have him paddle him across to Malaysia. And he hid in the jungles in Malaysia for the entire war. And that's why he survived, that I'm here today. If he didn't, we wouldn't be here. Great-grand-uncle, never seen of or heard of again. So that whole group that was taken from that primary school, no one found their relatives again. Now, at the end of the war, when I mentioned earlier, war crime trials were held. Operation Sukching was one of those things that came up. And when the Japanese were questioned about it, they said that they had only taken in about approximately 3,500 to 5,000 men. But when we tallied our records, families who had lost members, survivors, witnesses at the center, all the numbers we got was more like 30 to 50,000. And at the time, the Chinese population on the island, about 700,000. So it's quite a large percentage. I mentioned almost every family had someone affected. Now, after we gained independence, 60s, 70s, Singapore started rebuilding tremendously. Right? We needed to. We had lots of people who needed, proper houses to stay in. Construction. As they were digging all over the island, they started to find mass graves everywhere. And the remains that they found, when we gathered them all together, was closer to our numbers than to the Japanese numbers.